Welcome to The Explainer. So, what could a guide to selling million-dollar homes and a Reddit forum for romance novel fans possibly have in common? Well, it turns out they both hold the key to a universal blueprint for telling a great story. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
All right, so let's start with this. You've got two descriptions for the same house. Which one actually makes you want to go see it? It's the second one, right? Of course it is. And that's because it's not just spitting out facts. It's starting to tell you a story. It's not just selling a building, it's selling a whole vibe, a lifestyle.
So that brings us to our first source. It's a guide from a company called Luxury Presence. And these guys are pros at marketing seriously high-end real estate. Their whole game is built on this one simple idea. You don't just sell a property, you sell a lifestyle. And the way you do that, you turn a boring list of facts into a story that people can see themselves in.
And they've got it down to a science, a 5-step formula. But look closely. This isn't just a checklist for being informative. No, every single step is designed to spark a buyer's imagination, to create a real emotional hook. So what's the big takeaway here? You guessed it. It's all about the story.
Okay, but that brings up a really big question, right? What even is a story? I mean, what's the difference between a real, compelling narrative and just a bunch of stuff that happens? Well, believe it or not, the answer comes from a pretty unexpected place. A Reddit forum for romance novel fans.
So, over on a Reddit forum for romance readers, a user came up with this brilliant little test to figure out the difference between romance and erotica. They call it the romance test. And the idea is simple. In a true romance novel, the plot, the actual story, is how the relationship grows and changes. All the, let's call them spicy scenes, they're just events that happen along the way.
And this just nails the difference between plot and events perfectly. A real story, a good one, needs that central plot. That engine driving it forward. The steamy parts might be events that happen in the story, but the story itself is the journey of that relationship. Without that journey, you've got nothing.
So, if the plot is the car, what's the engine making it go? Well, it all comes down to one single powerful idea: tension. You can have the most interesting events in the world, but without tension, that story is just going to sit there, parked on the curb. In our third source, a guide for writers from Storm Writing School just puts it perfectly. They say tension is basically that feeling of anxiety you get from not knowing how something will be resolved. You know that feeling? It's like an itch you can't scratch. It creates this imbalance that makes you need to know what happens next. It's the reason you can't put a book down, or why you keep scrolling through that real estate listing.
But here's the thing. Tension isn't just one monolithic concept. It really breaks down into two fundamental types. And once you see them, I promise, you are going to start seeing them absolutely everywhere.
So what are they? Well, we have intrigue tension and dramatic tension. Think of it like this. Intrigue is all about mystery. It creates uncertainty about the meaning of something. It makes you ask, what's going on here? On the other hand, dramatic tension is all about conflict. It creates uncertainty about the outcome. It makes you ask, what's going to happen?
Okay, let's circle back to our real estate listing and see how this actually works in practice. First up, intrigue tension, the one that gets us hooked by making us curious.
So that headline, Historic Charm Meets Modern Elegance, that is pure 100% intrigue. It's a puzzle, right? Your brain immediately starts firing off questions. What does that even mean? How can a place be historic and modern at the same time? What would that even look like? And boom, you have to keep reading to get the answer. That little mystery is what pulls you in.
All right, now let's flip to the other side of the coin. Dramatic tension. This is the one that's all about conflict, about what's at stake. You see a phrase like act fast, won't last long. What does that do? It instantly creates drama. Suddenly there's a conflict, scarcity. There's only one of these houses, and you're not the only one looking. So now you're asking, what's going to happen if I wait? Am I going to miss out? You can feel that pressure, right? That fear of a bad outcome. That, my friends, is dramatic tension doing its job.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. You take the formula from the real estate pros, you add the insight from the romance novel test, and you mix in these two types of tension, and what you get is a universal blueprint, a formula that works for pretty much any great story you can think of.
So here's the blueprint. It's this simple. A great story doesn't start with facts. It starts with a hook that tells a story. That story has to have a real plot at its core, a journey, a relationship, something that moves. Then you use the 1-2 punch of tension. You pull people in with intrigue, making them ask, what does this mean? And you keep them on the edge of their seats with drama, making them ask, what's going to happen next?
And once you see this blueprint, you realize it's not just for novels or fancy house listings, it's absolutely everywhere. It's in movie trailers, it's in news headlines, it's even in the way your friend tells you about their terrible date last night. So the only real question left is, now that you know the secret, what stories are you going to start noticing?